The tickets have been punched. The bracket has been unveiled. It is time to go dancing. Live right here on SportsGrid's Bracket Central Selection Sunday Special. We are live starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for the next 3 hours to get you set and to make sense of all of the madness that we will see over the next 3 weeks. The field of 68 is out. We break it down region by region, game by game, round of 64 and beyond. I am Ben Stevens. He is the coach. That is JY James Young. 3 hours together, JY, up until 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And the 2024 Men's NCAA Tournament field of 68 has now been released.
This is like Christmas, right? Like we've opened up all our gifts. There are some gifts that some people will like, some gifts you may not like. But the field is set, and it now becomes the craziest 3 weeks of sports. I mean, you could already say, Ben, it already started over the weekend with all the upsets and the bid steals. So this is an exciting time of year, and over the next 3 hours, we're going to take you through the brackets, line up your bets, and hopefully we can all cash some tickets.
32 conference tournaments that we have seen around the country. 21 of the 32 number one seeds in those league tournaments were bounced before the championship game, which means what? Chaos has already ensued, and the madness only grows now that the NCAA tournament field has been revealed. We will look at the full tournament bracket. We will go region by region. So, JY, let's start with the number one overall seed in the 2024 Men's NCAA Tournament. It's the reigning national champs in the East region. Connecticut is that top overall team on the one line, the one seed in the East region. UConn looking to go back-to-back, cutting down the nets in early April as a defending two-time national champion for the first time since Florida did so in 06 and 07.
And this looks like a team that is playing as well as anybody in the country. And if you think about all the other teams that have been upset, well, it wasn't them. And I talked about this earlier today in Betting Above the Rim. The thing that's interesting about a team like UConn is this. They have the ability to what I throw the Mike Tyson punch, which is a hook from anywhere that can knock you out, and they go on insane runs. And it's, to me, the one thing you're going to watch for with UConn is their ability to run their pick and roll. They've really excelled at it, rolling Donovan clinging to the basket. Obviously, Newton coming off the ball screen, and you have Spencer and Carabin ready to shoot threes. Castle has stepped up his game. Listen, people talk about you don't want to come into the tournament playing too well. You may get picked off. I know the Hurley family. They want to win everything. They want to beat you in checkers. They'll beat their kids in checkers. They don't care. They want to compete. UConn's playing as well as anybody in the country.
The market's already moving for those national championship prices from when the field was revealed just about a half an hour ago. But UConn will enter the 2024 Big Dance as the national title favorites. A short number now, the shortest we have seen all year at plus 420. JY, let's fire through the three other number one seeds. It was contentious for that fourth and final spot. It goes to North Carolina, despite UNC following the ACC tournament title game last night to NC State, who won 5 straight games in D.C., stealing one of those bids. UNC takes the fourth and final spot on the one line in favor of a team, JY, that many felt would be that fourth and final number one seed, that being Iowa State, knocking off Houston yesterday in the Big 12 tournament championship game. The Cyclones, not even the top 2 seed in the bracket. They will be in that East region alongside Connecticut as well. So UNC, the fourth and final number one seed on that one line. The second overall number one seed in this tournament, that would be the Houston Cougars. Under Kelvin Sampson, JY, they've been a staple of March Madness in making deep runs deep into the month of March. And Purdue rounds out our 4-1 seeds. The Boilermaker season now truly begins. It will be defined by this next 2-3 week stretch, maybe into early April. A Final Four appearance has eluded Purdue since 1980.
Well, first for Houston, Longwood, good luck. I mean, I don't want to know. If I'm Longwood coach, I'm saying, can I get anybody but Houston? Because they're going to be in a bad mood. I don't know if Houston's going to give up 40 points in that first-round matchup. The interesting thing to me is always when it came down to it, Ben, is we knew who the top 3-1 seeds are going to be. It was the fourth one. Who was it going to be? And obviously, with it being North Carolina, that's why you see their odds to win a national championship at 20-1 behind other teams that are on the 2 or 3 line. So it makes it a very interesting case for North Carolina. But to me, the interesting thing is out of all of it, the Iowa State argument. Iowa State should sit there and say, We beat Houston twice out of 3 times. We were deserving of the 1 seed. I thought they were maybe going to go to the Midwest as the top 2 seed to pick where they wanted to go, and that would have been an intriguing matchup with them and Purdue. But then they sent them to the East, which out of all the teams Iowa State doesn't probably want to see, it's probably UConn.
You don't want to be in the East region, as has been detailed for UConn to get back to a Final Four in Phoenix. They are going to play their opening round games in Brooklyn, and then that second weekend, if they get to the round of 16 and into the Elite Eight, it would be played in Boston. And for a UConn fan base that can travel, those games might be called neutral sites, JY, only in name. North Carolina, that 1 seed in the West. Purdue, of course, the 1 seed in the Midwest. Houston, the top overall team in the South region. Houston, a 23.5-point favorite against the 16 seed in that portion of the bracket. It would be Longwood. UConn will lay 26.5 for its opening round game in its title defense against Stetson. No round of 64 game odds out just yet, JY. For Purdue, the top team in the Midwest region, or for UNC in that West region as well. So when you look at how a bracket is formed, people want to know the seed lines, certainly those 4 number 1 seeds that we have in the Big Dance, and they want to know the last 4 teams into the tournament. Very interesting bubble this year. And for the first time in a long time, we will see 10 seeds face off in the first 4 in Dayton, Ohio, starting on Tuesday. Often an 11 seed or a 12 seed matchup in that first 4 game. Last 4 teams into the Big Dance in the field of 68 here in 2024. Boise State, Colorado, Virginia in Colorado State. First 4 teams, JY, left out: Oklahoma, Seton Hall, Indiana State, and Pittsburgh. Notice St. John's not even in the first 4 out.
Not even the first 4 out. And it looks like Richard Pitino we thought he stole Rick Pitino's bid, but they weren't even in the ballpark. The interesting one is going to be Virginia, folks. A Virginia team at times that's looked very bad. Listen, they run an antiquated pack line defense and a blocker mover offense where they're susceptible to not scoring. We've seen games where they've scored in the mid-40s with a shot clock. So that was the intriguing thing of maybe no Virginia. You could argue what Indiana State's resume was, St. John's resume, Seton Hall's resume. But here's the good thing about this for Virginia. You have a chance on Tuesday and Wednesday, wherever you play, to shut all the critics up and go win. The problem is I don't know if I believe in this team with the way they've been playing down the stretch. 2
of those Mountain West teams who we know are going to get a lot of consideration as a conference. We'll tally them up, but I believe 6 Mountain West teams into the NCAA Tournament, 2 playing in the first 4. Colorado State was sniffing the bubble. Boise State, the Broncos, not thought to really be on the bubble. That game, a virtual pick'em for the line we have out. Colorado State and Virginia, a 1.5-point spread in favor of the Rams. Again, over the next now a little bit under 3 hours, up until 10 p.m. Eastern time, we go step by step through the bracket. We'll have some handicapping for the round of 64. We'll have a bracketologist, Mike DeCourcy of Fox Sports, join us later. And next up, we start with the number 1 overall seed, UConn, and the East region. Come back and join us on SportsGrid.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like
This is the
guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn
always
State rule.
going to be better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Kentucky on the road as a 7-8 point dog, beat Tennessee by 4. North Carolina as a 5.5 point underdog, beat Duke on the road.
I took Kentucky plus the points. I think you won it as well. I even said I wouldn't be shocked if they won it. I'm not shocked. They're just that good. It's can they be focused for 40 minutes, and they actually played, I guess you would call it somewhat defense.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
And a Cinderella run in March Madness, which is what we love out of the NCAA tournament. Indiana State should be in the big dance. I hope the selection committee follows.
Depending on what bracket they end up on, they could really make a strong case to win the national championship. Hence why their odds keep getting shorter, and shorter.
Only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the rim.
All I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
And welcome back into Bracket Central as we start in breaking down first the number 1 seed, which would be UConn. UConn team, the defending national champions. Dan Hurley's team, who ran roughshod through the Big East, particularly once they got Donovan McClingan healthy after his little mid-season injury. A UConn team that's playing as well as anybody in the country. But if you start to bring up the top seeds, then UConn, the proven favorite to come out of East. Obviously, we know how they've been playing down the stretch. Let's take a look at some of the matchups and tell me what you think when you start to look at this bracket.
Yeah, it's a favorable draw for UConn. Interesting on the bottom half of the East region bracket for a team that we thought, JY, after winning the Big 12 tournament title on Saturday evening in KC, Iowa State, to think they could have been a number 1 seed to be the number 2 seed in the bracket of the number 1 overall seed, which would not happen if Iowa State was even that top number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. But again, sets up very favorably, as we knew was going to be the case, for Connecticut. More than likely the top overall team in the East region, playing in Brooklyn to start and then into Boston. And JY, when you start with UConn, 26.5-point favorite in their round of 64 opener and their title defense against Stetson, we expect Dan Hurley's Huskies to roll easily through. Again, we're going to look at this region and the bracket as we go through this segment. But, JY, we're going to do something fun here as we go bracket by bracket, region by region, throughout the field of 68. In each and every region, myself and the coach will give you our favorite matchup, a team that might be on upset alert, a team that could make a run, and a player you must know. So, JY, we start with you. What is your favorite matchup of the East region in the 2024 Men's NCAA Tournament?
Well, when you look at the matchups here in the first round, you got to go 8-9. An intriguing matchup right off the bat between FAU and Northwestern.
Yeah.
An FAU team that, some people could say maybe have not lived up to expectations this year with all these guys coming back. Dusty May doing a great job. Obviously, we think Dusty May, this could be it for him. Versus a Northwestern team that Chris Collins has done an excellent job of getting this team into the tournament. I don't know, Ben, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if they've been to the tournament before Chris Collins has got there.
They never were in the NCAA tournament before Chris Collins, correct.
And obviously my good buddy Scott, somebody I went to high school with, already sent me to no sleep till Brooklyn. So Northwestern, Chicago going to be in the building when they play at the Barclays Center this weekend.
It is also very interesting as you look at the top of that bracket. UConn, the 1 seed. FAU, the 8 seed. San Diego State, a 5 seed. 3 of the 4 teams from last year's Final Four in the same region in the NCAA tournament bracket in the same half of said region in the field of 68. JY, a great point about Northwestern going dancing for the second consecutive season. For the first time ever in school history, the 119th season of Northwestern men's basketball. My favorite matchup in the round of 64 in the East region is the 10-seed Drake taking on the 7-seed Washington State. JY, one of the reasons why. Game played in Omaha, Nebraska. Drake hails from the great state of Iowa. Not a very far trip for those Bulldog faithful in the round of 64. Should be a great environment. And as you see, as close of a game as you could expect. Washington State, at the moment, a slight favorite on the money line. I would not be surprised if at a certain point, JY, leading up to the round of 64, the Bulldogs flip to the favorite. All credit to Wazoo under Kyle Smith. First NCAA tournament berth since 2008. But Drake, the champions of the Missouri Valley. Darren DeVries, the head coach. His son, Tucker, one of the best players in that conference. I think Drake can make some noise as the 10 seed in what would be a very slight upset to begin the round of 64.
And folks, you're going to hear me talk a lot about something called synergy. Synergy is something that we used in the college game to break down games and break down phones. So I do a lot of scouting reports and looking at teams. So when you start looking at it, the points per possession favors Drake. The possessions are about the same. Drake is better at effective field goal percentage on offense. The points scored, they shoot better from the free throw line. They turn the ball over less. So to me, you start looking at things that kind of line up, and then you go to the defensive side of the ball. Although Washington State's been known for their defense, points per possession, very tight. Pace the same. Effective field goal percentage, not much of a difference. So to me, this really lines up to be a really tight matchup. And to me, I wouldn't be surprised. And that's my upset alert pick. I like Drake to beat Washington State. I think you look at that league of the Pac-12, I don't think is as good as people think. I'm not dismissing what Kyle Smith has done at Washington State. It's been fantastic. In fact, if I'm a high major, if I'm a Michigan or whatever, I'm getting this guy on the phone. I'm trying to get him to my campus to lead my program. That's what he's done at Washington State. But I think this is a tough matchup for them. Drake offensively is dynamic, and I think they can pull the upset versus Washington State.
We'll give you some players to know in the East region, but again, keep your eye on Tucker DeVries, one of the best in the Missouri Valley. And that would set up a potential Iowa State Drake Battle of the State of Iowa in Omaha round of 32 matchup in the opening weekend of the Big Dance. My upset alert is Morehead State against Illinois. At the moment, Morehead State, the champions of the Ohio Valley, play a very slow pace, one of the 30 slowest in all of college basketball. A 13.5-point dog against Illinois. The Illini coming off a championship run in the Big Ten tournament. They can outscore anybody in the country. We have seen that time and again. But can the Illini defend? Fourth best offense in the country, 57th fastest tempo in all of college basketball. But JY, I think if Morehead State can slow down the pace, keep it within that margin of 13.5, it's anybody's guess what happens there for Illinois, a team that is looking to change its own NCAA tournament narrative. They have been bounced before the end of the opening weekend. The last 3 years, they have made it to the Big Dance.
And when you look at a team like Illinois, and this is why Ben likes this matchup, and although I think Illinois is going to make a deep run, you could make a case how they can get picked off. Why, folks? Because when you get to March, okay, and I want people to understand this, it's about 40 minutes of basketball. In 40 minutes, can you play and make your case in regards to dictating pace? Illinois, dynamic offensively. They can run up and down the floor. They have so many weapons, obviously, with Terry Shannon Jr., what he has done this year. But you look at Morehead State, you want to literally get a rebound, walk the ball up the floor, get a good shot, and then what you do is you start what we call shorten the game down, meaning less possessions, which means less of a chance for a team like Illinois to break out and get in transition. If you make it a half-court game, Ben, and they're not used to it, they start to get tight. So that's what you're looking at with a team like Illinois. Not just if they were to get by Morehead State, but even if you get all the way to the Sweet 16 versus Iowa State, same thing, contrasting styles. It'll be interesting to watch.
Morehead State has played two Big Ten opponents. They lost to Purdue by 29. They were a 20.5-point underdog, barely missing out on that cover. Only lost to Illinois Indiana by a single point. Morehead State covering as an 11-point dog. Again, just because we say upset alert, if Morehead State keeps it within 13.5, that's the beautiful part of what we are doing here on SportsGrid's Bracket Central Selection Sunday Special. It's not just filling out your bracket, It's the best bets and covering numbers along the way. Now some players to know, JY, in the East region. And you're looking at the biggest man on the floor for the reigning national champ and the #1 team in the NCAA tournament.
Man, you know I like me some bigs, right? I coach me some bigs. So I like big men, right? But here's the thing. The reason why my guy to watch is Don McClingan is if you've watched UConn lately, this wing pick and roll with Tristan Newton is absolutely deadly. When you have the ability to roll Donovan Clingan on their pick and roll, what it does is it puts a lot of pressure defensively on the opponent. What do you do with the 7'2" monster? Do you take away the roll and load up? Well, then you got Caravan, then you got Spencer. So to me, as long as Donovan Clingan is a threat on that pick and roll, UConn is flat out dangerous.
My player to know in the East region for the 4 seed in the East portion of the bracket, Janai Broom for Auburn. In Auburn's SEC tournament title victory earlier on this Sunday afternoon, 19 points, 11 boards. One of the most versatile players out of the SEC and a name to know for the big dance. When we come back here, live on SportsGrid's Bracket Central Selection Sunday Special, we look at where the market was just about an hour ago before the bracket was revealed and what the odds say now about a march through the madness and cutting down the net to the national champion. That's next.
The Bostonian versus the book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like this is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn
always
State
going to
rule.
be better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the book.
Kentucky on the road as a 7-8 dog, beat Tennessee by 4. North Carolina as a 5.5 point underdog, beat Duke on the road.
I took Kentucky plus the points. I think you won it as well. I even said I wouldn't be shocked if they won it. I'm not shocked. They're just that good. It's can they be focused for 40 minutes, and they actually played, I guess you would call it, somewhat defense.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
And a Cinderella run in March Madness, which is what we love out of the NCAA tournament. Indiana State should be in the big dance. I hope the selection committee follows.
Depending on what bracket they end up on, they could really make a strong case to win the national championship. Hence why their odds keep getting shorter, shorter, and shorter.
Only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats and fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the rim.
All I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's Bracket Central live right here on SportsGrid, our Selection Sunday special. The bracket has been revealed. The field of 68 is out. Now we paint the path through the 2024 Men's NCAA Tournament all the way to the end, the Final Four in Phoenix, and who will ultimately cut down the nets as the national champion in men's college basketball at the D1 level this year. I'm Ben Stevens. He is our coach. That's JY, James Young. So, JY, as we knew even entering today, despite a couple of teams getting bounced in their tournament title game or even before said tournament title game, the three top teams on the one line we knew were going to be in some order: UConn, Houston, Purdue. They have emerged as the big three in the final month and a half of this college basketball season, and that's where it remains from an odds perspective entering the 2024 Big Dance. Connecticut is the favorite and the number one overall seed in the bracket, plus 420 for Dan Hurley's Huskies to make it 2 straight national titles, but not all that far behind the Houston Cougars. Plus 550 for Kelvin Sampson's Cougs. They're the number one seed in the South region. Purdue, the 1 seed in the Midwest, a 7-1 number. Then you have to double till you get to Arizona, add on a buck. So, JY, we start with the big three: UConn, Houston, Purdue. What do you make of the top of the odds board entering the Big Dance?
Well, it makes sense, and if you think about it, it's all about matchups. So to me, obviously, with Houston losing, I think they were about $1 behind UConn. UConn kind of stretched it out. Mm-hmm. Now Purdue has kind of gotten closer to Houston. So to me, yeah, we talked about it, and we've talked about it for weeks on this network. They're the big three. They're the three teams that to us have been clear-cut the best three teams in the country, regardless of upsets. I don't count, this over the weekend. So to me, it makes sense when you get to the first three. It's after three when it starts to get a little hairy.
And here's the interesting thing as well. When you look at the tournament, now it's not necessarily about your seed line per se. It's about your matchups through the round of 64, into that opening weekend round of 62, or round of 32, second weekend, Sweet 16, Elite 8, all the way to that Final Four in Phoenix. So we didn't see a ton of movement, JY, based on where these odds were to where they are now. Houston had 50 cents shaved off that number despite falling short in that Big 12 tournament title game against Iowa State. We thought maybe because of that, the Cyclones would earn the fourth and final number one seed, not necessarily for Iowa State, who over an hour ago, 18-1 to win a national championship, now make that 20-1. In fact, there are 4 teams at a 20-1 price, JY. UNC, Creighton, Marquette, and Iowa State. North Carolina earned that fourth and final spot on the one line.
Yeah, and obviously when you look at what I found interesting out of all of it is if with Purdue, being the third favorite at 7-1 right now on FanDuel, the fact that both Creighton and Tennessee are inside of North Carolina, or to say Creighton is tied with North Carolina at 20-1 odds. So to me, I start looking at, well, where are they thinking about who can make a deep run? You look at Auburn. So to me, a bunch of teams in Arizona, Tennessee, Auburn, all have better odds than the 1 seed. So to me, they're saying we don't have a ton of confidence in them coming out. And just to think about it, that the fact that North Carolina is the 1 seed and then Arizona is the 2, and they're 15-1 versus 20-1. So obviously they're kind of telling you where they think the money is going right now and who should be coming out of each bracket.
It's a really good point, and it's how the odds match up with what we have here in the field of 68 in the Big Dance. Arizona, the 2 seed in the West, they will start against Long Beach State. That's a story we'll save for a little bit later on, but they at a 15-1 price, tied for the 4th best number in all of the country, $5 shorter than the 1 seed in that portion of the bracket out West. That would be North Carolina. JY, as you start to parse through some of these championship odds and setting up a run to a Final Four, when those tickets become profitable, if you look at 30-1 or longer, Alabama, Kentucky, Kansas, Baylor, some of the names that you know in this sport, where do you start to see some value from the national championship prices now that the bracket has been revealed?
And make sure I understand this, folks. Because, JY struggles with value and sleeper, so I want to make sure we're all on the same page here. We're talking about 30-1 or better. I actually have 2 teams, Ben, that are 30-1 that I have going to the Elite 8, and that's Kentucky and Baylor. So I'm looking at those 2 teams at 30-1 and saying, and Baylor is at 35-1, excuse me. Can those teams make a run? So to me, it's about matchups. If you look at a team like Baylor, where are they coming out of? They're going to be coming out of the region with North Carolina. So to me, can they come out of that bottom half and take out Arizona? When you look at a team like Kentucky, I'm looking at Marquette. We'll talk more about Marquette with my player to watch in a little bit. But, that kind of leads into injury, stuff like that. Kansas, folks, listen, I'll get to Kansas in a little bit. There's concern. As a coach, these are injuries that are just what McCullough and Dickinson are just, rub some, Bengay on or some Tiger Bomb and just go out there and play. Like, that's not the way this works. Yep. These guys are banged up and hurt. And a Kansas team that has not looked good even before some of these injuries. So that's a team that, even though they're sitting at 35-1, Ben, I can't really touch it, even though preseason they were the best team in the country, supposedly.
Kansas draws Samford in the round of 64. Samford can hoop. It's only an 8.5-point number with some of the questions around Bill Self's Jayhawks, who will enter the NCAA tournament for the first time under Bill Self with double-digit losses. KU, depending on how you look at NCAA tournament appearance streaks and maybe some violations and vacated wins, I don't really care. The NCAA, a sham of an organization. The Jayhawks have made it to the big dance 33 consecutive seasons. Michigan State, 26. Gonzaga now 24 straight years. But, JY, this is called March Madness. It is the theme of this month. Chaos, insanity. You never know what is going to happen. The uncertainty is always a part of these basketball matchups that we break down. Although last year featured the most chaos we have ever seen, no 1, 2, or 3 seed made it to the Final Four since the field expanded for the first time in 1985 to 64 teams, now 68. 24 of the 38 national champions since the field expanded to 64 in 1985 have been on the one line. It is madness in the first 2 weekends, making those deep runs, but by the time you get to the end of the tournament, the opening weekend of April, cream often rises to the top.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're going to see. You're going to see these I would say 3 of the 4, if you could think about which team has the longest odds to win the national championship, 3 of those 4 are going to make deep runs because of their style of play, but also because of their path. The fact that they are both, all 3 of them, not only some of the top teams offensively, but defensively, their metrics line up as well, so they can beat you in different ways. Now, obviously, Purdue's probably the most susceptible one because of what happened last year, but hey, listen, Virginia lost to UMBC. They turned around the next year, won a national championship. So everything is in front of them, and I think you're going to get, at least with Purdue, the best version of Zach Edey. To me, it's always going to be about, and we'll talk about him later, the guard play.
Right.
You got to be able to, and I think this is the thing I wanted to let people know. As much as I love my bigs, Coach loves the bigs. It's guard play. It's the ability to protect the ball, and it's the ability to knock down outside shots and to stop people on the perimeter. That is really how the game is won in college now.
A lot of similarities between Virginia and Purdue based on UVA in 2018, how they bounced back in 2019, culminating with a national champion to Purdue last season to this year as well. Purdue very happy the 16 seed is not from the state of New Jersey. The Boilermakers' third best number to win a national championship at 7-1. Now let's find some market discrepancies as we start to pour through the bracket and pair it up with national championship odds. A name and a number that stands out to me, JY. Out of the West region, the champions of the Mountain West tournament title, that would be the Lobos under Richard Pitino, Rick's son, and New Mexico. An 11th seed in the NCAA tournament field, but a 75-1 number to win the national championship. That is in the top half of those numbers that we have available from this field of 68. So again, it is that seed line matched up with whatever that tournament title price is now, JY, that the bracket has been unveiled.
Well, I think that also lends to the fact of what they think about New Mexico's path. If they were to get by a team like Clemson and get to Baylor, they're in the region away from UConn, away from Houston, away from Purdue. So you're going to sometimes find your certain prices that don't think you match up. Well, they match up, ready, folks, based off the matchup. Yeah. So I think that's the key thing you have to look at when you start betting and looking at it. Don't look at necessarily the odds. You almost want to look at the pathway first, and then if the odds and the pathways line up, then you start looking at it. But I think Richard Pitino's done a great job. People think about you playing at the pit. That's where their dominance is. But they got better on the road, and I think that could help you, especially when you go to the tournament when every game's a neutral site.
New Mexico, a slight favorite in its opener, despite being the lower-seeded team. The 11 versus Clemson out of the ACC. Clemson is that 6th seed. So we have the top 18, or I believe 16 or 8. We'll check that in just a moment. In terms of the national championship prices, I do want to make this point, though. 15 teams at 35-1 or shorter to win a national championship right now. That includes Kansas and Baylor. Duke and BYU would be tied for the 16th best number out of the field of 68 to win a national championship. Both of those prices 40-1. Those are the 8 best numbers correlating, JY, as you can see on your screen, with their respective seed line. Despite being the 4th and final team on the 1 line, North Carolina at 20-1, Duke is 40-1. Tied for the 16th best number. We'll get deeper into Duke on the other side as we keep it rolling here on SportsGrid's Bracket Central Selection Sunday Special all across the SportsGrid network. We showed you the region in the East of the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. Now to the South region, where Houston is the top team and how their portion of the bracket lays out. Come back and join us on SportsGrid.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like
This
is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn
always
State
going to be better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Kentucky on the road as a 7-8 dog, beat Tennessee by 4. North Carolina as a 5.5 point underdog, beat Duke on the road.
I took Kentucky plus the points. I think you won it as well. I even said I wouldn't be shocked if they won it. I'm not shocked. They're just that good. It's can they be focused for 40 minutes, and they actually played, I guess you would call it, somewhat defense.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
And a Cinderella run in March Madness, which is what we love out of the NCAA Tournament. Indiana State should be in the big dance. I hope the selection committee follows.
Depending on what bracket they end up on, they could really make a strong case to win the national championship. Hence why their odds keep getting shorter, shorter, and shorter.
Only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the rim.
All I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Live right here on SportsGrid, it's Bracket Central, the Selection Sunday Special. He is the coach, that is JY. I am Ben Stevens. So JY, now we go into the South region, where the number 1 overall seed in this portion of the bracket is Houston. They draw Longwood in their opening round of 64 game. The Cougs currently booked as a 23.5-point favorite. As we go deeper through this portion of the bracket, Nebraska into the NCAA Tournament for the first time since 2014. They get a very hot buzzsaw in Buzz Williams, Texas A&M Aggies. Nebraska, the last power conference team, James, that has not won an NCAA Tournament game in program history. Wisconsin made it to the Big Ten title game, came up just a little bit short against a streaking Illinois team. And who does Wisconsin receive as the 5 seed in the South? The 12 seed James Madison, the champions of the Sun Belt, one of the better mid-major teams you will see in college basketball. Duke and Vermont, the 4-13 matchup in the top half of that bracket. We start with that 1 seed, JY. How do you think the top of the South region lays out for Kelvin Sampson's Cougs?
Longwood got a long draw. Oof. I mean, 23.5? Houston, go take it now, because I know one thing, or just take the team total under for Longwood, because Lord knows what Kelvin Sampson's going to do to them poor kids at practice. I feel bad for them. Still, someone's going to have to pay for that. But when you look at Houston's draw here, pretty interesting looking at that second-round matchup potentially versus Texas A&M versus Nebraska. Think about this. I mean, we're talking about Nebraska and Texas A&M, and we're not talking football. So we're talking about 2 guys in Buzz Williams and Freddie Hoiberg that done a great job taking football schools and really bringing basketball to prominence there. And we will talk about a very intriguing layer of that matchup, not involving just a football team or a football coach, but an athletic director in Trev Alberts that left Lincoln, surprisingly earlier this week, to go to College Station with Texas A&M. Bottom half of the South region bracket, the 2 seed in the South is Marquette. They were bounced last year in the round of 32 by Michigan State as the champions of the Big East, despite being on that 2 line. They draw Western Kentucky to open things up. The Hilltoppers, the champions of CUSA. Kentucky, the 3 seed, a team that can score. Can Coach Cal's Cats defend? They get Greg Campy and Oakland, the champions out of the horizon. Campy, who has been there for 40 seasons, brings the Grizz back to the NCAA tournament for the first time in more than a decade. Then you get to that play-in tournament game out of the South region. The winner of Boise State and Colorado will face off against Florida. Again, intriguing, JY, to look at the Mountain West and have Boise State into the play-in tournament game in Dayton. We have heard from the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee chair about the Mountain West. Despite sending 6 teams from a very strong mid-major conference into the big dance, the committee felt that the Mountain West really buoyed its numbers by playing each other in conference, although if you look at the actual numbers and what they did in the non-conference as well, an interesting seed line for a lot of these teams out in the Mountain West, including who we mentioned earlier, New Mexico, 75-1 to win a national championship on the 11 line despite winning the Mountain West Conference Tournament. Yeah, and I think when you look at this Boise State matchup, either or Boise State or Colorado is going to present an interesting play versus a team like Florida. A team like Florida who is, folks, I mean, they're 230 points per possession defense. That is something that, as a coach, would scare me, is the fact that we can't get stops. And I think that's one thing you're going to have to look at when you look at that bottom half of the bracket. You have 2 teams in both Kentucky and Florida from the SEC who do not play good defense. How far can that take you? Now, the differences you can say between Kentucky and Florida is that Kentucky's got probably, I would say, more guards. You're talking about 6 guys that can get you 20 points at any time. But to me, it's about getting stopped. So although Kentucky, I think, can make a run, I'm looking at that game between Boise State and Colorado, and who comes out of that will be intriguing when they go out and face Florida.
Boise State, by the way, non-conference strength of schedule for the argument. The Mountain West really elevated its numbers strictly in conference action. 32nd in all of the country out of 362 Division I men's college basketball programs. The 6th seed in the South, that is Texas Tech. The 11th seed, the champions out of the ACC. That would be NC State. A magical run in the nation's capital over this past week. 5 games, 5 wins for the Wolfpack. We'll get into one of their stars. You like Big Ben. I got one for you for NC State. But let's dive through some of our favorites as we pour through the South region. What is JY's favorite matchup in the South?
Yeah, I just talked about it. It's going to be the matchup between whoever plays Florida. I just think you have 2 teams in Boise State and Colorado that can really take out Florida. And to me, when you look at Florida, if you slow them down and make them a half-court team, they're in trouble. I mean, if you even watch the game today, right, in the SC Final, literally, it's put your head down, drive to the basket. Well, now what you're going to do in the NCAA tournament? You're going to close the lane off. You're going to contest threes. And then what's really going to be tough for a team like Florida is when you play against these teams that are better defensively is when you go and you run down the floor and you go shoot and take a bad shot, and this team comes down, runs their offense, gets a good shot, get a score, and then you come down, you do the same thing offensively, then you start to panic a little bit. So I definitely am looking at that matchup and seeing who comes out of that Boise State Colorado matchup versus Florida. I think either one of them can take out the Gators.
The Buffs, by the way, booked as a short 2.5-point favorite for that first 4 play-in game in Dayton, Ohio in just a few days. Colorado won 8 straight games in the Pac-12 tournament title, got upset by Oregon. The Ducks into the NCAA tournament. A lot of bid stealers out there over the weekend in the respective conference tournaments. Todd Golden, second year in Gainesville, coming from San Francisco. Those 3 teams that you mentioned, 2 of them in the South region out of the SEC, Alabama, Kentucky, Florida, 3 of the 20 fastest tempos in college basketball. The total's not out in large part for the round of 64. You can look at some overs with Florida. My favorite matchup is a game we alluded to earlier in the South region, round of 64, the 8-9 split. Nebraska, a short favorite, laying 1.5 right now against Texas A&M. The Aggies playing great basketball down the home stretch of their SEC slate. But Nebraska, in its first NCAA tournament since 2014, trying to make history this season. They are the last power conference team out of the 80 in the Big Six in college basketball that is yet to win an NCAA tournament game in the Big Dance. They are favored slightly to do so. And I talked about the narratives, JY. I know you had your eye on this game as well. Trev Alberts, back at his alma mater, was an All-American on the football field for the Cornhuskers in the early 90s, was the AD in Lincoln for the last 4 years, decided this week, abruptly and frankly out of nowhere, to take the open athletic director job in College Station to lead Texas A&M athletics. So extra motivation for a Nebraska team that is looking for its first NCAA tournament victory in school history.
I mean, this is like a Spanish novella. This whole thing, and I think it's interesting because I think when you get to this bracket, the thing that I want to look at really quick is this 12-5 matchup between JMU and Wisconsin. And to me, when I talked to you guys before about the fact that I'm a defensive guy, I like to get stops. Right? When you go look at synergy, you start looking at the comparisons. You have a team in James Madison who is a 35th in points per possession versus the 285th points per possession defense in Wisconsin. You look at effective field goal percentage, 40th for JMU, 301st for Wisconsin. If you look at turnover rate, 12.3%, 47th. You know, they make their free throws. They score at 46.2% of the time. Their scoring percentage, that's 25th. Wisconsin, 290th. So to me, that is the upset, Ben, that I'm looking at. And if you don't want to take an upset with that, maybe just look at maybe the JMU team total over, because their metrics of how they score versus how Wisconsin doesn't get stops, maybe another way you could play it.
Wisconsin was a team that was 16-4 at the end of January. They went 2-6 in February, split their final 4 regular season games in the month of March, won their first few at the Big Ten tournament, of course, in Minneapolis this week, coming up just a little bit short against Illinois in that title game. James Madison, though, will not back down from this challenge against the Badgers. JMU, of course, JY, sent shockwaves at the very start of this 2023-24 college basketball season against another Big Ten foe. In East Lansing, JMU knocked off then 4th-ranked Michigan State outright in OT as a 16.5-point underdog. My upset alert in this portion of the bracket is that 4 seed, Duke, who has been struggling as of late, and a lot of headlines have followed this Blue Devils team following the court storm fiasco and the upset that Wake Forest pulled off over the Blue Devils, although the Demon Deacons actually booked as a home favorite in that game. But since that point, Duke losing to North Carolina to end out the regular season at home, it allowed UNC to claim the ACC regular season championship outright. And then, of course, JY bounced in its opening game on quarterfinal Thursday in the ACC tournament by the eventual champs, NC State. Now, Vermont into the NCAA tournament once again out of the America East. They have dominated that conference. And the Catamounts this year booked as an underdog 7 times, 4-3 against the spread. All 4 covers have been an outright victory. Slow pace, top 65 defense. I think Vermont, in this matchup against the Blue Devils, can frustrate what Duke wants to do.
Yeah, and I think when you come down to guard play, it's been the play of Roach, McLean. Proctor, it's inconsistent. Yeah. And I think that's the thing you want to see is consistency. Kyle Filipowski will be Kyle Filipowski, but I'm going to say it ad nauseum tonight. It is about guard play. Consistent guard play will take you there. And Vermont is a team that plays really well. They play well together. They're experienced. They've been to the big dance before. They won't be scared of the moment. And, Ben, listen, the way Duke has trended as of late, I think that's a pretty smart pick to think that could be an upset for a Duke team that really can go to the Final Four or get knocked out in the first round.
When you look at the Catamounts, again, they will not be intimidated by the large stage that is the NCAA tournament, their 5th tournament berth in the last 7 NCAA tournaments. Now, a player to know out of the South region. And JY, a player to know not only in what he can do on the basketball floor for you, but what his health status will be into the NCAA tournament. That's Marquette's Tyler Kolek.
Listen, folks, oblique injuries are serious. This is not a cramp. This is something that's going to be with him and anytime he moves, get hit. You may see teams run more ball screens at Kolek and hit him and tag him as much as possible. But Tyler Kolek, who really has become maybe the best point guard in the country, listen, folks, 42% of the time Tyler Kolek is involved as a pick-and-roll ball handler. So that becomes big, and he actually has become a really good spot-up shooter in the 97th percentile nationally in spot-up shots. He's good in transition, and he is the engine because he allows Jones to do what he can do, which is score the ball. Tyler Kolek, if healthy, can bring Marquette all the way to a Final Four. If Tyler Kolek's not healthy or doesn't play, Ben, I don't even know if they get out of the first weekend.
It will be a defensive challenge for Shaka Smart and the Golden Eagles. Western Kentucky, the fastest tempo in all of college basketball. WKU and Big Red, they like to get out there and run. The player to know, you said you like big men? How about this? DJ Burns Jr., the big man for NC State. He was electric in the nation's capital. 5 straight wins for the Wolfpack. They list him at 6'9", 275. If he's 275, I'm 155, and I look like Bradley Cooper because DJ Burns ain't exactly under 3 bills, but in every game, all 5 victories for NC State in the ACC tourney in D.C., scored in double figures in the tournament title game against North Carolina. 20 points efficiently, 9 of 12 from the field, 7 dimes as well. We will look at the bubble to end out this opening hour next.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like
This
is a guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn State rule.
Be better than the West half.
Yep.
And that one year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Kentucky on the road as a 7-8 point dog, beat Tennessee by 4. North Carolina as a 5.5 point underdog, beat Duke on the road.
I took Kentucky plus the points. I think you won it as well. I even said I wouldn't be shocked if they won it. I'm not shocked. They're just that good. It's can they be focused for 40 minutes, and they actually played, I guess you would call it somewhat defense.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
And a Cinderella run in March Madness, which is what we love out of the NCAA tournament. Indiana State should be in the big dance. I hope the selection committee follows.
Depending on what bracket they end up on, they could really make a strong case to win the national championship. Hence why their odds keep getting shorter, shorter, and shorter.
Only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the rim.
All I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody is more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smarty.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Listen, that's some height right there. James Young at all of 6'6", letting you know what you need to know for the 2024 Men's NCAA Tournament. I am Ben Stevens. He is our coach. That is JY. We end out the opening hour of 3 live right here on SportsGrid's Bracket Central Selection Sunday Special. JY, the bubble, always an important conversation. When the NCAA Tournament bracket is unveiled, who made it into the field of 68 and who were those last couple of teams left out. Last 4 teams in to this year's field of 68. Colorado State and Boise State out of the Mountain West. Colorado out of the Pac-12. And Virginia survives into the NCAA Tournament. Colorado State and Virginia, Boise State and Colorado will face off in the first 4 on Tuesday and Wednesday in Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah, and I think if you look at a team like Colorado getting themselves to the Pac-12 championship game, obviously lends itself to be there. Obviously, the talk is going to be a lot about Virginia and their style of play and what they've done, and teams being left out. I think here's the big thing you have to realize, folks. The number is 5. You know what that is? That's a number of bid stealers that took place over the course of championship week.
Yeah.
2 or 3, I'm not mistaken, over the last 2 years combined. So when you look at all the bid stealing, the Oregons, the NC States, you know, we can keep going on and on and on. New Mexico.
In the A-10.
In the A-10.
You had Duquesne take it, yeah.
So when you have all those bid stealing, that leaves a lot of heartache for teams like St. John's, Seton Hall, so on and so forth.
New Mexico, top 35 in the net, but the selection committee chairman said that if the Lobos had not won the Mountain West Conference tournament title, New Mexico would have been out of the field of 68. So Colorado, 8 straight wins into that Pac-12 title game on Saturday night against Oregon. They were upended, but covered in all 5 games in that 8-game win streak as a single-digit favorite. They laid 2.5 against the Broncos. Virginia and Colorado State, a virtual pick'em at this moment. We will pay attention to the total. We will start to take an early preview at the first 4 in Dayton when hour number 2 of SportsGrid's Bracket Central Selection Sunday Special, live right here across the SportsGrid network, continues. Hour 2 comes your way in less than a minute.